Shalom, my friends. If anyone watches this, I am not sure if I'll make this public right away or ever. But today, I wanted to draw some object lessons from just cleanliness. Because if you look around me, I've done a great deal of work and spent most of the day so far cleaning at least this section of the apartment. And it was quite different earlier. And the same sorts of thing can happen to our hearts. We we can just pile up and procrastinate, and we can let our hearts be filled with all this filth and covetousness and the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. And at a certain point we need to get in there and get sweeping and do our part, but let God's grace and His forgiveness pour water onto all that dust, all that accumulated junk, and let His grace and mercy, the blood of His Son, just wash it away. Because we're incapable of doing it on our own. We need to co-labor with God. We need to pick up that broom and walk, take up our bed and walk, so to speak, and go and sin no more. But we need His blood. We need Him to co-labor with us. He is the co-laborer in our character building. We need His blood to cleanse us from sin, because the famous verse, John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him might not perish, but have eternal life." Perishing is our destiny if we do not determine our King in this life to be Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, the Son of God the Father. And if we do not yield ourselves to Him and accept His sacrifice, then we are left, as the scriptures say, the wages of sin are death. We are destined, and just naturally the consequence of sin is judgment and annihilation. We are doomed to burn and be consumed, because our God is a consuming fire, if we do not let Christ cleanse us and let Him clothe us in His character, that we can be spotless. Because otherwise we are tainted and defiled and wicked, and those things can have no part in the new heaven and the new earth. There can be no spot of no spot of defilement, no filth will enter the new heaven and new earth, the new kingdom. And we need to trust Him, because He's the only one who can do it. We need to trust in the Lord with all our hearts. And this is my father's favorite verse. It reads, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy paths." And that might not be a perfect quotation, but the sentiment is there. We have a part to play. Many people think that they cry from the rooftops, "We are saved by grace through faith, saved by grace." And I agree. But it is through faith. And faith, as is written in the book of James, without works is dead. And we need to have a living faith, because without that, what is there? One of my favorite quotations goes something like, "There is no greater evidence in favor of the gospel than a loving and lovable Christian." Another quote says that A well-ordered Christian family is of more value and influence than 1,000 sermons. We esteem the sermons, the traditions, the orchestrations of ritual in church, and the different routines that you go through of more value than, or many people do, too many people do, esteem those things have higher significance than a well-ordered Christian family. And a obedient Christian life will invite inquiry. People will ask you, why do you do what you do? And you can say, I love him who made me, and if I love him, he has said, if you love me, keep my commandments. It is not a yoke of bondage, because we do not strive to do something in our own strength. We strive to take our strength that is sufficient, or his grace is sufficient, and his strength is made perfect in our weakness. We strive to walk with him, to look and live, to walk, to look. These are the simple things that we are metaphorically and even literally called to do. If I told you to look at something, or I told you to walk with me, those are simple tasks. But if you were to if you were to do them, you would need to do them. You could not sit and walk with me. You could not lay down and walk with me. You could not look at your phone and look at me. They are simple things, but we are promised, if you look, you will live. And we see this in John 3 and in the Exodus and the wilderness story. We see that just as the serpent was lifted in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Meaning that we are to look to Christ and live. Just as that serpent God instructed that serpent to be made, and that brazen serpent, and to be put on a cross or a stick and lifted up, and that when people looked down and got bit by the serpents that were around them, they would be in peril to die from the poisons. But they could look at that brazen serpent and live and be healed. And this is a massive object lesson. We live in a world surrounded by all sorts of serpents, all sorts of dragons. And we need to look to that brazen serpent, to Christ who became sin for us, so that we could be glorified, so that we could know him and have eternal life. Because he so loved the world. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him might not perish but have eternal life. So this is a special privilege that we have, to co-labor with God in our character building, to refine our character, to let him refine our characters, and to do our part. Because when we do what we can, God and his angels labor to do what we cannot do. So I will leave you on that thought. Thank you for listening. After going through all that talk, I feel like it would be a bit irresponsible of me not to publish this, considering what I perceive to be the significance of this message. So please let me know what you think, and let me know what object lessons you have seen, and comment with videos you have made or videos from friends of yours, and I hope to check them out. So thank you for watching, and shalom, my friends.